Hello again. I'm Miss Jody from the Literacy Volunteers of Harrison County. And I keep forgetting to tell you, but at the end of the show, if you will hit share and like, that would be nice. And if you'd like to subscribe and hit the subscribe button, then you will get other mentions of some of the stories that we've told and some of the other offerings that we have at Literacy Volunteers. Today I'm going to tell you the story by Beatrix Potter, who's a very famous, she's the one who wrote Peter Rabbit and all those stories you know. But this is about Squirrel Nutkin, the little squirrel. And it's the tale of Squirrel Nutkin. This is a tale about a tale. That's using the word tale meaning story, and also tale about a squirrel with a tail. A tale that belonged to a little red squirrel, and his name was Nutkin. He had a brother called Twinkleberry and a great many cousins, and they lived in the woods next to a big lake. In the middle of the lake there was an island covered with trees and nut bushes. Sit up here. And among those trees was a hollow oak tree, and that was the house of an owl who's called Old Brown. We're going to meet Old Brown in a minute. But Nutkin was very impertinent, which sometimes means rude, but sometimes he just was very noisy and in your face. He bobbed up and down like a little red cherry, singing, riddle me, rat-a-tote-tote, a little wee man in a little red coat. A staff in his hand and a stone in his throat. If you tell me this riddle, I'll give you a groat. Now, I don't know what that means. We never find out what the riddle means, but Squirrel Nutkin tells a lot of riddles. Now, in the riddle is as old as the hills, and Old Brown made no attention to Nutkin. He just shut his eyes. Did I miss a page? I missed a page. Let's go back. I'm going to go back because we're talking about the lake. One autumn, when the nuts were ripe and the leaves on the hazel bushes were golden and green, Nutkin and Twinkleberry and all the other little squirrels made a raft to go across the river, the lake, to the island where Old Brown lived. They made rafts out of twigs, they paddled away over the water, and the owl to gather nuts. Each squirrel had a little sack with a large oar, and spread out his tail. See, they used that for a sail. Took with them an offering of mice for the present for Old Brown. They put them on his doorstep. Now, we're going to come over here. Oh, come on, Old Brown. So here's Old Brown. He's going to watch these silly squirrels. Then Twinkleberry and the other little squirrels made a very bow, and they said politely, "Old Mr. Brown, will you favor us with permission to gather nuts upon your island?" Now we're back to silly Nutkin, because he wouldn't be polite. He would jump up around and say his riddle. Old Brown paid no attention to that riddle. He just shut his eyes and went to sleep. The squirrels filled their little sacks with nuts and sailed away home that evening. The next morning they all came back again to Owl Island, and Twinkleberry and the others brought a little mole and laid it in front of Old Brown's house. "Will you favor us with a gracious permission to gather nuts?" But Nutkin, who had no respect, started to dance up and down, and he said, "Old Mr. B, riddle me tree, hitty pitty pitty within the wall, hitty pitty without the wall. If you touch hitty pitty, he'll bite you." Mr. Brown woke up suddenly and carried the mole into his house. He ignored this little squirrel. The others were out just gathering nuts. Shut the door in Nutkin's face. Presently a little thread of blue smoke from the wood fire inside came out of the fire. Nutkin peeped through the hole and sang, a house full, and you cannot gather a bowl full." Squirrels searched for nuts all over the island and filled their little sacks. But Nutkin gathered oak apples, and he put up a stump playing marbles with the oak apples. He just wasn't doing anything the way the other squirrels were. On the third day, the squirrels got up very early, went fishing, and they brought minnows. And they brought those as a present for Old Brown. They paddled over the lake and landed under the oak chestnut tree with Old Brown. Twinkleberry and the other little squirrels each carried a fat minnow, but Nutkin had no nice manners, no present. He ran in front singing, "The man in the wilderness said to me, How many strawberries grow in the sea? I answered him as I thought good, as many red herrings as grow in the wood. He just said these riddles that meant absolutely nothing, and he was just teasing Old Brown. Old Mr. Brown took no interest, not even to answer. On the fourth day, now this is the fourth day, the squirrels brought a present of fat beetles, which were good as plum pudding. Each beetle was wrapped in a leaf fastened with a pine needle. But Nutkin sang as rudely as ever. Old Mr. B, riddle me bee, flower of England, fruit of Spain, met together in the shower of rain, put in a bag, tied with a string. Makes no sense whatsoever what he's singing, which is ridiculous of Nutkin because he had not anything to give Old Brown. That was the fourth day. The other squirrels hunted up and down the leaves, but Nutkin gathered pin cushions and just was being silly with bushes. On the fifth day, the squirrels brought a present of wild honey. It was so sweet and sticky that they licked their fingers. Of course, not Nutkin. They had stolen it out of a bumblebee's nest. Oh my! But Nutkin slipped up and down. Hum, hum, buzz, buzz, hum, hum, buzz, buzz. As I went over Tippletine, I met a flock of honey wine. Some yellow, and he went on and on again. This silly, silly rhyme. Old Mr. Brown turned up his eyes in disgust and impertinence, but he did eat the honey. The squirrels filled their little sacks, but Nutkin went about on a flat rock, and he was playing nine pins. That's kind of like bowling. He set up pine cones, and then he rolled an apple, and he was playing like they were bowling, having nothing to do with it. On the sixth day, which was Saturday, the squirrels came again for the last time, and they brought a new egg in a little basket, and they gave that as a parting wish to Old Brown. But Nutkin ran in front, shouting, Humpty Dumpty lies on her back, with a white counterpane around his neck. 40 doctors and 40 wrights cannot put Humpty together to write. Now Old Brown took an interest in the eggs. He opened one eye, and then he shut it. Still he did not speak. Nutkin became more and more impertinent. Now impertinent sometimes means rude. Sometimes it just means noisy and bossy. Old Mr. B, hackamore, hackamore, kittens in the kitchen door, couldn't leave hackamore. Nutkin danced up and down like a sunbeam. But Old Brown said nothing at all. Nutkin began again, and he was doing another silly rhyme. Nutkin made a whirring noise to sound like the wind, and he took a running jump right into the head of Old Brown. Okay. He was being rude. So he jumped up and this old owl grabbed him by the wing, and he grabbed the squirrel. And he was caught. And I have to find my page because the other squirrels knew what was happening. Now I have to find the page. Here we go. So the squirrels had run away when the owl finally spoke up. They came back cautiously, peeked around the tree, and there was Old Brown sitting on his doorstep with his eyes closed as if nothing had happened. But Nutkin was under his wing. This looks like the story, at the end of the story, but it isn't. Old Brown carried Nutkin into his house and held him up by the tail, intending to skin him. He was so cross because they made so much noise. But Nutkin pulled very hard with his tail, practically broken two. Whoop, I'm going to put that. So Nutkin jumped out and went up out of the tree. And he went this way, and Old Brown stayed there. So here's Nutkin finally going to go home. Dashed up the tree and escaped out the window. And to this day, if you meet Nutkin up in a tree, ask him a riddle, and he will throw sticks at you and stamp his feet and shout, "Cuck, cuck, 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 cuck." And that is the end of the story, because I think Nutkin finally learned his lesson that if you tease an owl is pretty big, an owl has strong talons, an owl is going to take only so much stuff. So best to look at an owl and say, "Good morning, Mr. Owl." So Nutkin got his comeuppance. But that's the end of... Beatrice Potter wrote a lot of stories about animals, and I bet you'll enjoy them. So if you like us, hit share, and it'll go on and to other people read it. And if you hit subscribe, we will send you some more stories. Thank you for listening.